She was one of the most recognizable faces in the Chinese-speaking world, dominating screens from Taiwan to Beijing with a career so clean and effortless that many believed she would remain untouchable forever. Yet behind this polished success lay a silent pressure that most viewers never noticed. When cross-strait politics hardened after 2016, something shifted. Invitations that once arrived weekly slowed. Major productions quietly moved on without her. Online debates began questioning her neutrality, even though she had never made a political statement in her life. And just like that, a woman who once filled primetime schedules across mainland China found herself navigating a landscape where silence itself had become dangerous. This is the story of how Ruby Lin, once everywhere, became a symbol of how politics can swallow a career without a single headline. Stay with Scandal Asia Files for a case that reveals more than you expect. Ruby Lin's rise began long before politics tightened its grip on the entertainment world, and it started at a moment when the Chinese-speaking markets were still drifting toward one another rather than pulling apart. In the late 90s, audiences across China, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia were swept into a cultural phenomenon that no one could have predicted. My Fair Princess exploded onto screens and turned unfamiliar faces into household names almost overnight, and among them was Ruby Lin, whose portrayal of a calm and graceful character instantly set her apart. Her appeal did not come from loud performances or dramatic scandals. It came from something much more valuable in an industry built on control. She was seen as safe, neutral, and entirely unthreatening. That image helped her cross borders at a time when most Taiwanese actors were still navigating an unpredictable political relationship with mainland China, and it placed her in a unique position where all three major markets welcomed her without hesitation. Over the next decade, producers, broadcasters, and advertisers all quietly agreed that Ruby Lin was the kind of celebrity who never caused problems, never flirted with anything political, and never allowed personal drama to spill into the public sphere. This made her a rarity in the entertainment landscape, and the industry rewarded her accordingly. As the early 2000s unfolded, Ruby Lin became a familiar presence in dramas that aired repeatedly across state television networks in mainland China. This period was defined by an unusual openness in cross-strait entertainment cooperation. Beijing viewed culture as a form of soft power, and Taiwan's actors and singers were treated more as cultural assets than political opponents. Ruby Lin benefited immensely from this atmosphere. She accumulated roles in historical epics, melodramas, and romance series that were distributed widely across Asia, each strengthening her reputation as a dependable actress who could anchor a show without overshadowing it. Her public persona remained consistent through the years: polite but not distant, elegant but not glamorous, visible but never provocative. These traits allowed her to rise steadily without becoming the subject of any political or tabloid storms. Very few actresses managed to remain this clean for this long, and industry insiders often described her as the ideal cross-border star. Her success was not limited to acting. By the early 2010 seconds, Ruby Lin's ambitions began shifting toward production, a move that marked the beginning of a new chapter. Forming Ruby Studio was more than a business decision. It was a statement that she understood how the entertainment industry functioned behind the curtain. Producers in mainland China were becoming increasingly influential, especially as streaming platforms like iQIYI, Tencent Video, and Youku accelerated demand for large-scale dramas. Ruby Lin entered this world with experience, relationships, and a reputation for being exceptionally easy to work with. This made her stand out in a field dominated by aggressive competition and complicated networks of investors. She produced dramas that performed well, and her influence expanded both on-screen and off-screen. For a short period, she occupied one of the most stable and enviable positions in the Chinese-speaking entertainment ecosystem. Yet even in this golden era, subtle warnings were emerging. Online spaces in mainland China began shifting around 2013 and 2014 as nationalist sentiment grew more vocal. Comments on Taiwanese celebrities were becoming harsher, and fans started demanding political clarity rather than simple neutrality. These early signs did not immediately threaten Ruby Lin's career, but they did foreshadow a climate where silence could be treated as suspicion. At this point, however, she was still everywhere. She appeared in primetime dramas, variety programs, and high-profile public events. Advertisers continued to favor her image because it conveyed purity and reliability. No other Taiwanese actress maintained such a consistently high presence in the mainland market during that time. Ruby Lin had mastered the art of being visible without being controversial. Her ascent during this period was helped by the broader political atmosphere of the Hu Jintao era, which encouraged cultural exchange and supported the idea that Taiwanese and mainland Chinese audiences shared a largely unified media landscape. Ruby Lin's roles from this time reflect that environment. Historical dramas that softened political tensions, modern romances that never touched on sensitive themes, and family-oriented series that appealed to viewers of all ages. Everything about her career was designed to flow in one direction, upward. The industry trusted her, the audience adored her, and the political climate, still relatively calm, created no obstacles for someone who avoided provocative statements and kept her personal opinions out of sight. In short, Ruby Lin represented the perfect cross-market star, and for a long time, that position seemed unshakable. What made her rise even more remarkable was how she managed to age gracefully out of the ingenue roles without losing relevance. Many actresses who debuted in the 90s faded as newer talents emerged, but Ruby Lin maintained her place through strategic role choices and a work ethic that earned respect behind the scenes. Her entry into producing added durability to her presence, and for a few years, she seemed immune to the volatility that defined Chinese entertainment. Viewers trusted her name, investors trusted her instincts, platforms trusted her professionalism. Everything suggested that she would remain a fixture in Chinese-language entertainment indefinitely. But the stability that defined her early career existed in a very specific political context. The entertainment industry she built her success upon depended on a fragile balance between Taiwan and mainland China, a balance that was already beginning to crack beneath the surface. Ruby Lin could not have known it at the time, but the very traits that had protected her for so long, neutrality, silence, and cross-border appeal, would soon become vulnerabilities. The environment that once lifted her up was slowly transforming into one where ambiguity itself would be treated as danger, and visibility would stop being an asset and start becoming a liability. The shift that reshaped Ruby Lin's career did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded gradually, beginning in 2016, when Tsai Ing-wen was elected president of Taiwan. Her victory signaled a political direction that Beijing strongly opposed, and within months, the entertainment industry in mainland China began recalibrating how it viewed Taiwanese celebrities. The changes were not published, they were not openly discussed, and they did not appear in any official regulations. Yet everyone in the industry understood that a new era had begun, one in which the political safety of a Taiwanese actor or singer depended not on talent or reputation, but on visible alignment with the One China stance. Ruby Lin had never expressed political opinions, which had once been considered an advantage. But under this new climate, silence transformed into a question mark. Producers who previously saw her as a safe choice suddenly faced a level of scrutiny that made planning around her far more complicated. Although she never made any political declarations that attracted criticism, the industry began treating neutrality as a risk. Other Taiwanese celebrities responded to this shift in different ways. The most infamous example was Cho Tzu-yu, whose appearance with a Taiwan flag in 2016 triggered a storm of online outrage that forced a scripted apology circulated across Chinese media. The message was unmistakable. If someone as young and apolitical as Tzu-yu could become a political flashpoint, anyone could. Actors like Ariel Lin, Wallace Huo, and Tiffany Ann Shu were repeatedly mentioned in online debates about which Taiwanese stars were loyal and which were suspicious, even though most of them had never publicly challenged Beijing. Ruby Lin was included in these conversations from time to time, despite having no political record at all. Online observers debated her silence, her marriage, her collaborations, and even the scripts she chose. None of this was officially sanctioned, but it created an environment where every Taiwanese figure in the mainland market was treated as though they needed to constantly prove their political harmlessness. For Ruby Lin, the timing was particularly delicate because she was no longer just an actress. She was a producer with growing influence within the mainland entertainment system. Producers oversee financing, casting, partnerships, and sometimes editorial direction. This meant Ruby Lin's name appeared not only in marketing materials but also inside contracts, internal meetings, investor briefings, and regulatory filings. That visibility brought prestige, but it also created vulnerability. A producer from Taiwan with significant decision-making power could trigger caution among mainland partners who were nervous about political optics. This was not because Ruby Lin had done anything wrong, but because the environment had changed. The political winds were blowing in a new direction, and those who worked with her had to consider not just her brand, but the perception of her brand. After 2018, small but noticeable changes began appearing in Ruby Lin's career. She continued to work, but the scale of her mainland presence gradually diminished. High-profile invitations that were previously routine began tapering off. Major promotional events, state-linked ceremonies, and primetime entertainment galas featured her less frequently. These shifts were subtle enough that they did not cause public controversy, yet clear enough that industry insiders quickly noticed the pattern. They described it as quiet deprioritization, a phrase used widely within mainland entertainment circles to describe stars who are not banned but strategically sidelined. It was a fate shared by several Taiwanese and Hong Kong artists during the era, and although no formal announcement was ever made, the absence itself became the message. Online discussions added another layer of complexity. Rumors circulated claiming Ruby Lin's influence had become too large without her making clear political statements. These rumors were never proven, and no authoritative source confirmed them. They existed mostly in internet forums, gossip threads, and social media speculation. Still, the conversation itself mattered because it reflected a broader sentiment inside the audience. Viewers who once celebrated Taiwanese celebrities began questioning whether continued support for them was patriotic. This shift in public opinion had a direct effect on casting decisions, as producers and broadcasters wanted to avoid unnecessary controversy. In a market where a single trending topic could derail months of production, avoiding risk became more important than embracing talent. Comparisons to other cases illustrate why Ruby Lin's situation was so precarious. Ariel Lin saw a decline in mainland opportunities around the same period. Despite never making any political statements, Wallace Huo, Ruby Lin's husband, occasionally faced online accusations of harboring pro-Taiwan sentiments, despite having built his career largely in the mainland. Mainland fans argued endlessly over whether his marriage to a Taiwanese actress strengthened or weakened his perceived allegiance. These arguments had no official consequences, but they shaped the tone of online discourse. Even Zhao Wei, a mainland-born megastar, disappeared from the public sphere around 2021 for reasons never fully explained, proving that sudden invisibility was not limited to Taiwanese performers. The industry had entered a period where decisions could be made quietly, without explanation, and without any path for appeal. Ruby Lin's producer identity made her situation even more unusual. Actors can be replaced, but producers represent control, influence, and long-term planning. Every project she led required approval across multiple departments, each of which had to consider political reception alongside commercial viability. Even if she remained completely apolitical, her very presence inside the production system meant the system needed to evaluate the optics of her involvement. This new reality contrasted sharply with the environment she had built her career in. The China of the 2000s encouraged collaboration with Taiwan, while the China of the late 2010 seconds subjected cross-strait partnerships to political scrutiny. The tightening entertainment environment under Xi Jinping amplified these pressures. Campaigns promoting patriotism, national unity, and ideological alignment became more visible. Regulations on celebrity behavior, content themes, and online culture were strengthened. Performers with foreign backgrounds or dual identities, especially Taiwanese entertainers, were evaluated with increasing caution. Ruby Lin did not defy these norms, but she also did not publicly embrace them. In earlier years, her neutrality had been admired. Now it was interpreted as a lack of clarity. In a system that demanded signals, she gave none. By the time these shifts fully settled, Ruby Lin's mainland presence had transformed from constant visibility to selective appearances. She still worked, but the scale of her reach was different. Her decline in high-profile roles was not dramatic enough to create headlines, yet significant enough that longtime viewers noticed. It was a transformation built not on scandal, wrongdoing, or personal conflict, but on the mechanics of geopolitics. Ruby Lin became an example of what happens when a celebrity built on cross-border appeal tries to survive in an era that no longer welcomes ambiguity. To many observers, she had become dangerous not because of anything she did, but because she no longer fit comfortably within the narrative the entertainment system wanted to project. Ruby Lin's retreat from the mainland spotlight did not unfold like the downfall of other celebrities whose careers were destroyed by scandal or public controversy. Instead, it took the form of a controlled, deliberate, and almost graceful disappearance. She remained active, but the center of gravity shifted. Increasingly, her projects were anchored in Taiwan, where political complications were minimal and creative control was easier to maintain. These were productions that did not require mainland regulatory approval or the delicate negotiations that accompany cross-strait collaborations. In Taiwan, she could work without triggering the chain reaction of questions and risk assessments that had become routine whenever her name appeared on a mainland production schedule. The shift was subtle, but unmistakable. A star who had once been a regular feature across Chinese state platforms now appeared primarily in spaces where politics held far less weight. Her selective appearances became another sign of adaptation. Ruby Lin was never a celebrity who thrived on continuous media exposure, but after 2018, her presence became notably limited. She accepted roles that were personal rather than strategic, choosing projects that did not require major mainland promotion. She gave interviews that focused on craft, family, and nostalgia, avoiding anything that could be interpreted as political commentary. Observers described her demeanor as calm, carefully measured, and detached from the noise that had consumed the entertainment landscape. These choices protected her not only from political backlash, but also from becoming a pawn in cross-strait discourse. Maintaining distance was a form of survival. Her producer identity evolved under this new environment. As mainland projects became riskier, Ruby Lin focused on productions rooted in Taiwan's creative ecosystem. This shift allowed her to maintain influence without inviting political scrutiny, but it also placed limitations on scale. Mainland streaming platforms had budgets and reach unmatched by Taiwan's smaller market, and stepping away from them meant sacrificing a portion of the vast audience she once commanded. Yet it was a necessary compromise. By recalibrating her ambitions instead of confronting the emerging political structure, she preserved her long-term stability. Many celebrities who tried to force their way through geopolitical shifts ended up erased, while Ruby Lin survived by avoiding that collision entirely. Her retreat aligned with a broader pattern that had emerged in the Chinese entertainment system, one governed by a rule few dared to articulate openly: not banned, but not prioritized. In this system, a star does not vanish because of a public announcement or a legal consequence, but because opportunities simply stop flowing. Invitations slow, partnerships fade, and primetime appearances are quietly reassigned to others. It is a soft form of invisibility, one that can be reversed theoretically, but almost never is. Ruby Lin became part of this category not through scandal, but through misalignment, with a political era that demanded clear allegiance. Her identity as a Taiwanese producer operating in the mainland had become a liability, even if she never expressed an opinion on cross-strait issues. The impact of geopolitical tension on her career becomes clearer when compared to others who face similar shifts. Zhao Wei vanished from the entertainment landscape for reasons that remain unexplained. Ariel Lin found her opportunities in mainland China steadily reduced, despite maintaining the same neutral public persona she had held for years. Even Hong Kong stars who were once dominant figures experienced sudden shifts in visibility as political expectations tightened across the board. The system was no longer guided solely by talent or audience demand. It had become an extension of national narratives, and those who did not fit neatly into its structure were gradually pushed to the margins. Yet Ruby Lin avoided the harsh consequences that befell others. She was never erased from search results, never subjected to public accusations, and never forced into a public apology. Instead, she managed her fading presence with a rare sense of control. Choosing silence protected her. Choosing distance shielded her. Choosing smaller-scale projects preserved her career without inviting the scrutiny that consumed those who attempted to navigate the new entertainment climate while remaining at the center of it. Her withdrawal was not a collapse, but a calculated response to the political pressures surrounding her. Her story illustrates how invisibility can be a protective strategy rather than a punishment. Ruby Lin adapted by becoming less visible at the exact moment when visibility carried risk. She chose to retreat from the mainland environment before it had the chance to turn on her. This is what separates her from stars whose careers ended abruptly. She anticipated the shift, read the environment correctly, and repositioned herself in ways that allowed her to continue working without triggering political consequences. The disappearance that audiences perceived was not simply the result of a system closing its doors. It was also the result of Ruby Lin quietly stepping back before the door had a chance to close on her. In this retreat, she preserved something many others could not: agency. Instead of letting the political climate dictate her entire career, she shaped her own trajectory in response to it. This ability to adapt is part of why she remains respected today, even if far less visible. The entertainment world she once dominated transformed into something unrecognizable, and rather than fight against these changes, she shifted into a new lane where she could continue to work without compromising her identity. Her disappearance from the mainland spotlight was not a fall from grace. It was a strategic adjustment to an era in which political ambiguity had become dangerous. Ruby Lin's case ultimately represents the intersection of culture and geopolitics in the modern Asian entertainment industry. A star who once rose effortlessly across 3 markets became an example of how fragile cross-strait careers can be when political tensions reach a breaking point. Her story is not dramatic in the traditional sense. There is no scandal, no confrontation, and no definitive ending. Instead, there is a quiet truth. In a system where politics dictates visibility, the safest choice for a cross-border star can sometimes be to step away. Ruby Lin did exactly that. Her retreat reveals the hidden forces that shape careers behind the scenes, and it shows how even the most enduring stars must navigate political tides they cannot control. Ruby Lin's disappearance from the mainland spotlight was never about scandal, guilt, or personal failure. It was the result of a shifting geopolitical climate that demanded signals she chose not to give. By stepping back rather than fighting forward, she protected her career, her family, and her agency in an era when many stars lost all 3. Her story exposes a quiet truth about modern Asian entertainment. Sometimes, the most dangerous position is simply being caught in the middle. For more investigations into the hidden mechanics shaping Asia's biggest stars, subscribe to Scandal Asia Files.